Number 14. Joanna Deni. In March of 2013, a chilling killing spree unfolded in Peterborough, England, as 31-year-old Joanna Deni embarked on a 10-day rampage that claimed the lives of 3 men. The gruesome events led to her sentencing to spend the rest of her life in jail. Deni's spree extended beyond Peterborough. She drove 140 miles to Hereford, attempting to murder 2 additional men, John Rogers and Robin Bereza. But at the Old Bailey in London, Mr. Justice Spencer delivered a whole life term to Deni, ensuring that she would never be released. This rare sentence, shared only with notorious criminal Rose West, reflected the severity of Deni's crimes. The court proceedings also implicated Deni's accomplices, Gary Stretch and Leslie Layton, who were both convicted for offences related to the killing spree. Stretch received a life sentence with a minimum of 19 years, while Layton was sentenced to 14 years. Another accomplice, Robert Moore, received a 3-year sentence for admitting to assisting an offender. Deni's first victim, 31-year-old Lucas Slabashevsky, fell prey to suggestive texts, believing Deni was his girlfriend, before being fatally stabbed through the heart. Over the following fortnight, Deni used a pocket knife to murder her housemate, 56-year-old John Chapman, and her landlord-stroke-boss, 48-year-old Kevin Lee. Then, when she was in Hereford, she attempted to murder 2 strangers walking their dogs within minutes of each other. Describing Deni as a cruel, calculating, selfish and manipulative serial killer, the judge highlighted her sadistic lust for blood. Deni, donned in a pink sleeveless t-shirt, exhibited a disturbing demeanor, laughing and chatting during the proceedings. The judge revealed Deni's psychopathic personality and a strange fascination she provoked among her victims. Lee's body, dressed provocatively with exposed buttocks, was disturbingly positioned in a ditch. Deni's excitement at police manhunt reports and her disturbing confession to a psychiatrist added more layers of horror to the case. Despite being a mother of 2, Deni's lack of remorse for the murders and her admission of some blame for attempted murders due to drunken cruelty and lack of respect for human life shocked the court. The whole life term was deemed appropriate due to substantial premeditation in each murder, her diagnosed paraphilia sadomasochism, and a deficiency in normal human emotions. Deni became the second person that week to receive a whole life term, emphasizing the gravity of her crimes in the records of English criminal history. Number 13. Enticing the victim. In 2019, a tragic incident took place in Dallas, Texas, resulting in murder charges against 3 individuals. 18-year-old Sydney Whitaker became entangled in a crime that involved enticing 21-year-old Adrian Wells with the promise of a sexual encounter, only to rob him at gunpoint. This sinister plan took a deadly turn, leading to the death of Wells and severe injuries to another man. The sequence of events began when Whitaker, who'd met Wells the day before the incident, reached out to him with a text expressing her desire to engage in a sexual act. Subsequently, armed robbers, including Whitaker, lured Wells outside of his apartment. Then, once outside, they forced him back into the apartment, demanding cash. The situation escalated when the robbers discovered 2 additional individuals inside. Unfortunately, gunfire erupted during this confrontation. Adrian Wells lost his life on the scene, while a 45-year-old man suffered critical injuries and was rushed to a local hospital for treatment. A witness at the scene reported seeing a woman with a facial tattoo fleeing the area after hearing gunshots. When approached, the woman revealed that she wasn't okay and swiftly departed. 2 days after the incident, Sydney Whitaker contacted the police claiming to possess information about Wells's death. However, she failed to appear for a scheduled interview, raising suspicions. Investigations revealed that a family member of Whitaker's informed authorities that she'd driven 3 men, including 22-year-old Tyrone Williams and 21-year-old Jaroy Rogers, to Wells's apartment for a marijuana transaction. And Whitaker admitted to being in the car when the fatal shots were fired. All 3 individuals, Whitaker, Williams, and Rogers, were charged with murder related to their alleged involvement in the shooting. Rogers faced additional charges of theft, engaging in organized crime, and drug possession. The trio is currently held at a Dallas County jail, with bail set at $500,000 for Whitaker and Williams and $607,500 for Rogers. The outcome of the case remains uncertain, marking a grim chapter in the legal proceedings surrounding this harrowing incident in Dallas. Number 12. Doppelganger. In early 2023, a shocking case unfolded in Germany, revealing a 23-year-old beautician named Sharaban K, who was arrested on murder charges for an intricate plot to fake her own death by killing a woman resembling her. The incident, characterized by deception and violence, took place in Heilbronn, southern Germany. The elaborate scheme began in August 2022 when Sharaban contacted beauty blogger Khadija O on Instagram. Using the promise of a cosmetics kit, Sharaban convinced Khadija to meet in person. Accompanied by her boyfriend Shakir K, the duo allegedly picked up Khadija in their Mercedes and proceeded to carry out a fatal stabbing, presumably somewhere between Heilbronn and Ingolstadt, another city. According to prosecutors, Sharaban and Shakir then placed Khadija's body in the back seat, drove to Ingolstadt and abandoned the car. And to add another layer of complexity to the scheme, Sharaban informed her parents that she was meeting her ex-husband in Ingolstadt. Later that day, her parents searching for her discovered the body, mistakenly believing it to be their daughter, and identified it before an autopsy report was available. Initial local reports mistakenly identified the victim as Sharaban, but subsequent autopsy findings confirmed the true identity as Khadija. Investigators revealed that Sharaban had used multiple aliases on Instagram to contact women resembling her in the weeks leading up to the murder, attempting to convince them to meet up. Sharaban and Shakir were detained on remand in August and were officially charged with murder after a 6-month investigation, with arrest warrants issued at the end of January. The motive behind Sharaban's suspected desire to fake her own death was disclosed by a representative from the Ingolstadt Public Prosecutor's Office, suggesting internal family disputes as the driving force. But the exact details of these disputes remain unclear. The mystery deepens as the murder weapon has yet to be located. If convicted, both Sharaban and Shakir could face life sentences, marking a horrifying case of deception, murder, and familial conflict in the German legal landscape. Number 11. Derrica Wiggins. In late 2023, a disturbing arson incident in Memphis, Tennessee led to the arrest of Derrica Wiggins, a woman accused of intentionally setting her ex-boyfriend's bed on fire while he, his new girlfriend, and their baby were asleep. The crime, shrouded in apparent malice, unfolded in March. However, Wiggins wasn't booked into the Shelby County Jail until December of that year. Records, which differ in reporting her age, with Law and Crime stating 20 and local outlets saying 19, show that Wiggins is held on a $150,000 bond. According to WREG, the female victim recounted hearing what sounded like a lighter outside the bedroom and glimpsing someone peering through the door crack. Initially dismissing it as one of her boyfriend's brothers, the victim was shocked to wake up to the sight of the comforter engulfed in flames. The boyfriend managed to extinguish the fire before firefighters arrived, confronting Wiggins in the driveway. Police obtained ring surveillance footage capturing Wiggins entering and exiting the house during the incident. Fortunately, though, no injuries were reported from the alleged attack, but the fire inflicted smoke damage on the bedroom. Wiggins now faces charges of aggravated assault, arson, reckless burning, and setting fire to personal property. The arrest and charges resulted in Wiggins appearing before a judge, signaling the legal aftermath of a troubling and potentially dangerous act in the city of Memphis. Number 10. Evelyn Martinez. Evelyn Martinez, born on December 30, 1991 in Torrance, California, is currently wanted for murder, attempted murder, and unlawful flight to avoid prosecution. Martinez, who's believed to be residing in Mexico, is a known gang member with strong ties to the area, facing serious allegations related to a murder and attempted murders dating back to 2009. Martinez's distinctive tattoos include the word Socorro on her stomach, the word South Los in an unknown location, and the letters LA on her left arm. And with a lengthy criminal history under her belt, Martinez is considered a dangerous individual. The charges against Martinez stem from an incident that occurred on December 28, 2009, when she allegedly drove her boyfriend, Stephen Aguilar Medina, to a rival gang area in Los Angeles, California. The sequence of events unfolded as Aguilar Medina exited the van and approached two individuals outside of a residence, reportedly shouting a gang term before firing multiple shots, resulting in the death of one individual. The Superior Court of California, County of Los Angeles, has charged Martinez in connection with the incident, leading to a state warrant for her arrest. Furthermore, a federal arrest warrant was issued by the United States District Court, Central District of California, on March 3, 2010. Considered armed and dangerous, Martinez shouldn't be approached under any circumstances. Martinez's accomplice and boyfriend, Stephen Aguilar Medina, who's believed to be 26 and known to use multiple aliases, was also wanted in connection with these crimes. The pair's actions on that fateful day in 2009 marked them as fugitives, prompting law enforcement agencies to intensify efforts to bring them to justice. And while Evelyn Martinez is still on the run, Aguilar Medina was apprehended on October 18, 2022, in the state of Mérida, Mexico. Number 9. The Killer Grandma. Lois Reese, infamously dubbed the Killer Grandma, embarked on a chilling crime spree in 2018 that spanned Minnesota and Fort Myers Beach, Florida, ultimately resulting in a life sentence for her heinous acts. Chief Assistant State Attorney Rich Montecalvo from the 20th Judicial Circuit shared insights into this bizarre and unsettling case. The macabre journey began in Minnesota, where Reese murdered her husband. She then traveled south to Fort Myers Beach, where she encountered Pamela Hutchinson, a trusting woman who paid the ultimate price for her faith in Reese. Montecalvo described Hutchinson as someone who just trusted people, and she paid with her life. Reese, displaying audacious confidence, attempted to assume Hutchinson's identity, but her plan unraveled. Montecalvo detailed the absurdity of Reese switching identities while gambling in Louisiana and Texas, highlighting the laughable nature of her actions. Fortunately, though, law enforcement intervened before she could harm another victim in Texas. The Killer Grandma continued her journey along the Gulf Coast, leaving a conspicuous trail of evidence behind. Montecalvo emphasized the role of video evidence, capturing Reese in various locations such as casinos, hotels, banks, and even at the bar where she befriended Pamela Hutchinson. April 5, 2018 marked the last day Hutchinson was seen alive, with Reese captured on camera wandering the complex where her victim stayed. Investigators swiftly connected the dots, noting similarities in the close-range gunshot wounds inflicted on both victims. Reese later confessed to employing a pillow to muffle the sound in both shootings. Following a month-long manhunt, Reese was recognized by a restaurant employee in South Padre Island, Texas, leading to her apprehension after a 911 call. And during their probe, investigators discovered the extent of her gambling problem. Despite the details coming to light, the motive behind Reese's decision to kill remains unknown. She pleaded guilty to the murders of her husband and Pamela Hutchinson, but declined an interview request. Lois Reese now serves a life sentence, bringing a semblance of closure to the perplexing and chilling saga of the Killer Grandma. Number 8. Caris E Ayala. In a tragic case from Sandy Springs, Georgia that took place in October 2012, a woman named Caris E Ayala was accused of causing the death of a 5-month-old boy who was under her care. Fast forward to 2021, and the FBI continued its pursuit of Ayala for this heinous crime. The case then gained renewed attention when it was featured on In Pursuit with John Walsh. Caris E Ayala, who was 35 at the time, was highlighted in the Season 3 premiere episode of the show, which aired on Investigation Discovery and streamed on Discovery Plus on August 18, 2021. The FBI, considering Ayala armed and dangerous, sought information on her whereabouts. The disturbing incident occurred on October 2, 2012, when Ayala was babysitting the infant in her apartment, and at some point, she called authorities reporting that the boy was unresponsive. Rushed to Children's Hospital in Atlanta, Georgia, the infant was diagnosed with a severe head-brain injury and was placed on life support. Unfortunately, though, on October 26th of that same year, he was removed from life support and succumbed to his injuries. Ayala's involvement took a sinister turn when, scheduled for further interviews on October 9, 2012, she failed to appear. Subsequently, a Fulton County warrant was issued for her arrest on charges of cruelty to children. The severity of the charges escalated as a federal arrest warrant was issued in the United States District Court, Northern District of Georgia, charging Ayala with unlawful flight to avoid prosecution. Following the baby's death, a felony murder warrant was issued for Ayala. Believed to be in Mexico or Central America, with potential ties to El Salvador, Guatemala, and Mexico, Ayala may be accompanied by her husband, Noe Castillo Ramirez, and their daughter. Castillo Ramirez, wanted on a local arrest warrant for hindering the apprehension of a fugitive, is described as a Hispanic male. Sadly, it's now 12 years later, and Ayala has yet to be brought in for justice. Number 7. Taylor Shaybis. In February 2022, Taylor Shaybis, a 25-year-old Wisconsin woman, faced the consequences of her gruesome actions as a Brown County judge sentenced her to life in prison without parole for the killing and dismemberment of her former boyfriend, 24-year-old Shad Thyrian. Convicted in July 2022 of first-degree intentional homicide, third-degree sexual assault, and mutilating a corpse, Shaybis had initially pleaded not guilty, and not guilty by reason of mental disease or defect. However, the jury determined that she wasn't mentally ill when she committed the horrific crime. The prosecution revealed that Thyrian and Shaybis had consumed methamphetamine in the basement of Thyrian's mother's Green Bay home before Shaybis strangled, decapitated, and dismembered him. Parts of Thyrian's body were left scattered through the house and in a vehicle. The shocking discovery came to light on February 23, 2022, when Thyrian's mother called the police after finding her son's head in a bucket in the basement. Brown County Circuit Judge Thomas Walsh, before announcing the life sentence, emphasized the gravity of the crime, stating, "The offense in this case can't be overstated." During the sentencing, Shaybis, who was asked if there was anything she'd like to say to the court, responded with a simple, "No, there isn't." The defense attorney, Christopher Froelich, contended that Shaybis, at 25, could still be rehabilitated and urged the court to recognize her humanity, stating, "She's not a monster." The trial had earlier witnessed a disturbing incident in February when Shaybis attacked her previous attorney during a hearing, requiring a deputy to intervene and restrain her to the courtroom floor. The culmination of the legal proceedings marked a somber chapter in the Wisconsin community, grappling with the brutality of the crime and the profound impact it had on the victim's family and the public at large. Number 6. Murder for hire. In October 2020, Jennifer Lynn Faith of Oak Cliff, Texas, received a life sentence without parole for orchestrating the murder of her husband, Jamie Faith, with her boyfriend, Darren Ruben Lopez. The sentencing followed Ms. Faith's guilty plea to the use of interstate commerce in the commission of murder for hire. Initially charged with obstruction of justice in February 2021, prosecutors dropped the charge in exchange for her guilty plea. During her sentencing hearing, a video was presented in which Ms. Faith described the killing to Dallas homicide detective Chris Walton, recounting the events of her husband's murder on October 9, 2020. Prosecutors also introduced surveillance audio of her screaming during the attack and video footage of her crying hysterically afterward. Ms. Faith's boyfriend, Mr. Lopez, allegedly shot Jamie Faith 7 times as the couple walked their dog, then fled the scene in a distinctive black Nissan Titan pickup truck. Ms. Faith, aware of the unique T decal on the truck, publicly appealed for help in locating it. She later encouraged Mr. Lopez to remove the decal after law enforcement became aware of it. The case unfolded with disturbing revelations of Ms. Faith's elaborate deception. She admitted to creating false email accounts posing as her husband and a friend to convince Mr. Lopez of non-existent physical and sexual abuse. This narrative was reinforced with downloaded stock images of injuries. Even after her arrest, she maintained the fiction in a note to Mr. Lopez, denying any deceit. Following her husband's death, Ms. Faith sought approximately $629,000 in death benefits through an insurance claim, periodically updating Mr. Lopez on its progress. The pair discussed using the money to secure a residence in Tennessee. And during the investigation, Ms. Faith coordinated cover stories with Mr. Lopez and even requested the deletion of text messages before questioning. In a text dated January 10, 2021, Ms. Faith instructed Mr. Lopez not to contact her on a specific day, emphasizing the need for a factory reset of her phone. The Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives, in collaboration with the Dallas Police Department's Homicide Unit, conducted the investigation, assisted by various agencies. Ms. Faith's sentencing was accompanied by strong remarks from United States District Judge Jane J. Boyle, who referred to her as pure evil. The U.S. Attorney Chad Meacham stressed the commitment to justice for Jamie Faith, expressing satisfaction with the life sentence as a step closer to that goal. Number 5. Evil Mother. In 2023, something horrible happened in Kentucky when 32-year-old Tiffany Ann Catherine Lucas was accused of fatally shooting her 2 young sons. The horrifying event took place at their family home, where the boys were found bleeding next to a gun on November 8th, ultimately succumbing to their injuries at a local hospital. Following the incident, Lucas faced murder charges, and during a court appearance, Bullitt County Sheriff's Detective Richard Beal provided insights from his interview with her. He revealed that both boys had been shot in the head, with 4 shots fired in approximately 30 seconds. Lucas claimed that the shooting was an accident, expressing remorse and stating that she must have been manipulated. In court, Detective Beal recounted Lucas's statements, noting that she acknowledged the accidental nature of the act, expressing her distress by saying, "I'm so stupid." Additionally, she asserted that she would never do anything like this unless someone manipulated me. Lucas specifically mentioned being manipulated through Facebook, through the internet, or through Wi-Fi as the influencing factors behind her actions. The detective's testimony also highlighted the lack of emotion displayed by Lucas during the court proceedings. Morris Baker Jr.'s stepmother, Michelle Rice, rejected the idea of external manipulation, emphasizing personal responsibility. She stated firmly, "Nobody can manipulate you to do such a horrific thing. Nobody can manipulate you to do that. That's yourself." The tragic incident came to light when a neighbor discovered the wounded boys in a bedroom next to a gun on the bed, prompting a call to the police. The neighbor recounted finding Lucas collapsed in his driveway, revealing her statement that her kids were dying. He rushed inside to aid the boys, who were later transported to a nearby hospital, but unfortunately succumbed to their injuries a few hours later. In the wake of this devastating event, Lucas was declared a danger to others, and her bond was set at $2 million. The case accentuated the profound impact of the tragedy on the community and raised questions about the role of social media manipulation as claimed by the accused mother. Number 4. Gang of Blondes. In Brazil, authorities have dismantled a criminal group known as the Gang of Blondes, composed of 6 attractive and educated women accused of kidnapping 54 female shoppers since 2009. The young women, with 5 of them being blonde, were reportedly releasing their victims after maxing out their credit cards. Over the weekend, 3 women from the group were arrested, along with a man suspected of coordinating their activities. The Gang of Blondes targeted upscale malls and supermarkets in Sao Paulo and Rio de Janeiro, meticulously selecting wealthy women who resembled them. Their modus operandi involved holding victims at gunpoint in their cars while others emptied their bank accounts. The women aimed to assume the identities of their victims and quickly release them once their criminal objectives were achieved. During one incident, the gang purchased nearly $9,700 worth of items using stolen credit cards and withdrew over $1,660. The stolen funds were often spent on high-end designer clothing. Joaquim Diaz-Alves, a police officer with Sao Paulo's anti-kidnapping unit, highlighted the gang members' attractiveness, well-dressed appearance, and proficiency in multiple languages. The group's sophistication surprised law enforcement, with Alves noting that in his 31 years on the force, he'd never encountered a case with such cinematic elements. Reports indicated that some members of the gang had received education abroad, contributing to their ability to speak multiple languages. The criminal activities of the Gang of Blondes evolved from breaking into condominiums in 2008 to engaging in express kidnapping, a form of abduction prevalent in certain Latin American countries, in 2009. Thankfully, though, authorities have successfully dismantled this criminal network, arresting key members and a suspected coordinator. The case shed light on a unique and audacious criminal operation that targeted affluent women through a combination of charm, disguise, and strategic planning in major Brazilian cities. Number 3. Possessed by the Devil. In August 26 in Oklahoma City, a disturbing incident unfolded when 33-year-old Geneva Gomez was found dead in a 1500 block of North McKinley. The shocking details emerged as Juanita Gomez, the mother of the deceased, told investigators that she killed her daughter while attempting to remove Satan from her body. According to the police affidavit, Juanita claimed that her daughter Geneva was possessed by the devil. Investigators discovered Geneva's lifeless body with a large cross or crucifix placed on her chest. Juanita informed authorities that she believed she'd been possessed by the devil the previous week, leading her to repeatedly punch Geneva, and in a gruesome revelation, Juanita admitted to forcing a crucifix and a religious medallion down Geneva's throat until blood emerged from her daughter's mouth. Court documents detailed Juanita's disturbing actions, indicating that she witnessed her daughter's death and arranged her body in the shape of a cross. The investigators noted that Juanita had swollen hands and large bruises on her arms. Juanita explained that these injuries were a result of Geneva resisting her attempts to rid Satan from her body. As a result of these horrifying revelations, Juanita Gomez faced a charge of first-degree murder. The case shed light on the deeply disturbing circumstances surrounding Geneva's death, with Juanita's claims of possession and the brutal methods she employed to exorcise what she believed to be demonic forces from her daughter. The tragic incident shook the community, stressing the severity of the events that transpired within the family home in Oklahoma City. Number 2. Rosemary Luu. Between 2012 and 2018, Nomia Rosemary Luu, born in 1978, emerged as a South African convicted serial killer, former policewoman, and insurance fraudster. Her sinister spree involved the deaths of 6 individuals, including her live-in partner and 5 relatives. The motive behind these heinous acts was financial gain, as she sought to exploit their life and funeral insurance policies, amassing a staggering 1.4 million South African rand by the time of her arrest. Luvu's journey into crime began within the ranks of the South African Police Service, where she served at the Tembisa police station and rose to the rank of sergeant. Despite being a respected member of the force, colleagues remembered her as a gambling addict who occasionally skipped work to evade loan sharks. The series of murders orchestrated by Ndlovu started in March 2012 when her cousin, Madala Witness Homu, was found beaten to death in Olifantsfontein. Ndlovu cunningly secured over 131,000 South African rand in insurance payouts for his demise. Her sister Audrey became the next victim in June 2013, falling prey to poisoning and strangulation while staying at Ndlovu's residence. Ndlovu profited from her sister's death, receiving a substantial insurance payout of 717,421 South African rand. Then, in the same month, Ndlovu's niece, Zanelle Motha, suffered a fatal beating, earning Ndlovu around 119,840 South African rand in insurance. The grim sequence continued in October 2015 as Ndlovu's boyfriend and father of her child, Morris Mabasa, was brutally murdered, bearing over 76 stab wounds. Ndlovu exploited death policies in Mabasa's name, accumulating more than 131,000 South African rand. In April 2017, her nephew, Mayeni Mashaba, met a tragic end in Olifantsfontein after a meeting with Ndlovu the day before his murder. The spree reached its peak in January 2018 when Ndlovu's nephew, Brilliant Mashego, was last seen alive in her company. He was found dead 2 days later, and in court, Ndlovu admitted to taking out funeral policies for Mashego. Ndlovu's reign of terror was brought to an end when she was arrested after being recorded attempting to hire an undercover police officer and another man posing as hitmen to burn her sister Joyce and her 5 children alive inside her house. In 2021, she was sentenced to 6 concurrent life terms for the murders, alongside additional terms for fraud, incitement to commit murder, and the attempted murder of her mother, Maria Mashawana. And now for number 1. But if you want to hear more bizarre and crazy stories, stay tuned after the video for some more content. Number 1. Susan Lawrence. In Ocala, Florida, Susan Lawrence, a 58-year-old woman, faced her initial court appearance following her arrest for the shooting death of Ajiki Owens, a 35-year-old mother of 4, on June 2, 2023. Lawrence, who's white, appeared via video from Marion County Jail, having allegedly shot Owens, who was black, in what was described as a dispute with Owens' children. The state attorney sought Lawrence to be held without bond, citing her lack of ties to the community due to unemployment and property. Lawrence admitted to using racial slurs against neighborhood children in the past, as revealed in a police report. The judge postponed the bond hearing until the state filed a motion for pre-trial detention, scheduling Lawrence's next court date for July 11th. Lawrence claimed self-defense, stating that she shot Owens, who she alleged was trying to break down her door. However, investigations determined Lawrence's actions weren't justified under Florida law. Owen's family attorney, Ben Crump, asserted that Lawrence frequently directed racial slurs at black children and antagonized them in the neighborhood. During the hearing, Lawrence, who was unemployed for 2 weeks, briefly discussed her job history in the medical field, helping people set up doctor's appointments. Charged with first-degree manslaughter, culpable negligence, assault, and battery, Lawrence faces up to 30 years in prison if convicted. The incident unfolded after Lawrence allegedly threw skates at Owen's 9-year-old son during an argument, prompting Owen's 12-year-old son to approach Lawrence. An altercation ensued, leading Owens to demand Lawrence to come out. Lawrence then shot Owens through a closed door, hitting her in the upper chest. Sadly, Owen's 9-year-old son was present during the shooting. Owen's mother, Pamela Diaz, expressed the family's grief, with Owen's 12-year-old son blaming himself for not saving his mother. The tragedy highlighted the ongoing feud between Lawrence and Owens. And although Florida Stand Your Ground laws initially complicated an immediate arrest, Lawrence was apprehended after gathering enough evidence, according to Marion County Sheriff Billy Woods.
Number 10. Glamorous and on the run. In 2017, Tegan Simpson managed to evade the police for 18 days after escaping from a prison farm on the Gold Coast. Her accomplice, Abigail Graff, was apprehended soon after. It started when they took off from an open prison in Nunimba Valley. They got a pretty decent head start because authorities didn't even know they were gone until they failed to show up for their routine head count at 11 p.m. By the time the cops started looking for them, they were already well on their way to the brief taste of freedom. Tegan had gotten locked up in the first place for receiving stolen goods, while her friend Abigail was in for assaulting a police officer. They didn't know each other before they were incarcerated, but they became friends fast once locked up. Seeing as the open prison wasn't really the most secure place, the pair decided that they would just take their chances and run off through the wilderness. This was despite the fact that neither were facing particularly long sentences. They could have just served their time and be done with it. Plus, Tegan, judging by her social media pictures, has been living a pretty glamorous life before landing herself in prison. She has photos on Facebook with a Mercedes, she appears to have a lot of friends, and she can be seen frolicking at the beach. At 24 years old, she was pretty normal, but when you look at her mugshots, things change pretty quickly. After a short stint in prison, and then 18 days trying desperately to escape, she was in rough shape. She almost looks now like a totally different person. Number 9. 6 days on the run. A 22-year-old woman escaped from the women's jail in Santee in 2019. After 6 days on the run, she was back in custody. The escapee is Destiny Guns, and she managed to squirrel her way out of the Las Colinas detention facility at about 5:30 p.m. 6 days prior to her escape, she had been arrested on minor charges of misdemeanor drugs and theft. But let's break down the actual escape. She was discovered missing during head count at 6:15, according to Lieutenant Sean Ray. The last time she was seen was nearly 45 minutes earlier at 5:35. Once she was gone, deputies conducted an intense search of the area. They used helicopters and dogs, but there was just no sign of her. How did she escape? It turned out later that as Destiny was returning to the facility from a medical appointment, she managed to leap over a series of fences and evade the deputies. They didn't even see her as she fled for her life. We don't know where she was while she was hiding for those 6 days, but she was caught and rebooked before the week was over. And here's where things get crazy. She was released from prison just shortly after this whole fiasco. Less than a year later, she was arrested on June 22, 2020, for murder. She was caught in Maryland stabbing someone named Chad Petrulis to death in his own apartment. Number 8. Over the Wall. Kiana Barnes was serving a 25-year sentence for murder when she managed to break herself free from the Louisiana Correctional Institute for Women in January of 2013. Kiana had murdered her boyfriend in New Orleans 10 years earlier in 2003, just before she went on the run in Mexico for a full year before she was apprehended by the authorities in 2004 and sent to Louisiana. Clearly, this was not a woman who liked to be locked up. She shaved her head just before her escape so that she wouldn't be easy to recognize. She managed to escape out of her cell window and scaled the perimeter gate. And if that sounds easy, it's because it was easy. It was even the second prison break from the same facility that week. Kiana made it all the way to California before she was caught again. She even made it onto the U.S. Marshals Service 15 Most Wanted list. It was the list that got her busted, as she was recognized by cops in Los Angeles and arrested. She's since been sent back to Louisiana to serve the rest of her sentence. Number 7. Escaped for 38 years. In February of 1977, Margaret Smith walked away from the Robeson County Women's Prison. According to her, she did it because she had to protect her family. Just before she made her daring escape, she had been visited by her 7-year-old daughter. Margaret never said what it was that her daughter told her during that visit, but whatever she said, it was so serious that Margaret broke out of jail shortly after. She made it to the highway, stuck out her thumb, and hitchhiked her way back home. Do keep in mind that this was the 70s, back when it was quite a bit easier to literally just walk out of jail. This was back when Ted Bundy escaped jail twice. Plus, Margaret hadn't been in prison for anything too serious. She was convicted in 1974 of writing over $200 in fake checks. But here's the thing, she was never recaptured by the police until now. 38 years after she escaped from jail, on May 14, 2015, FBI officer Tanya S. Sconyers knocked on her door. The knock on the door was part of an operation in conjunction with the FBI and the State Department of Public Safety to locate and return over 147 inmates who escaped prison. 14 of those escapees were discovered to already be in prison, while 18 were found to be dead. Most of these escapees came from the 60s and 70s. Margaret B. Smith, after enjoying a relatively normal life, is now locked behind bars. Do you think there should be a statute of limitations on this kind of thing? After all, Margaret went to prison in the first place for writing fake checks to feed her 7 kids. She was smart enough to escape for 40 years and now has to go back to jail. Do you think that's right or wrong? Let us know in the comments below. And if you're liking the video, be sure to hit the thumbs up and subscribe button if you haven't already. Number 6. Escape at the troubled women's prison. An inmate escaped from the most infamous women's prison in New Jersey, but freedom didn't last long. Hours later, she was tracked down by cops and dragged back to jail. According to the Hunterdon County Prosecutor's Office, Jessica Graham was already serving a sentence of 5 years for criminal mischief when she escaped. She was reported missing from the minimum security unit at the Edna Mahan Correctional Facility for Women during head count. Because she had no history of violence, there was no reason to keep her under intensive watch. Jessica used this to her advantage, sneaking out of the house where she was kept and making a desperate run out of the prison and into the surrounding area. But on foot, she didn't make it too far. The police picked her up just hours later near a restaurant in Clinton. The escape seemed like a good idea until she realized she had no mode of transportation, no food, and no proper clothes to wear. It was a pretty bogus idea anyway, considering she was about to be released. She tried to escape in November, when she had her release coming up in February. If Jessica could have just held out a few more months, she would have been a free woman. But then again, maybe things were just too horrendous in jail. After all, this is the place that has come under serious scrutiny for the male guards assaulting and violating many of the inmates. The sexual abuse problem has become so severe at this New Jersey prison that the government is actually trying to close the place down. Number 5. The helicopter escape. In 1987, 2 convicts escaped prison in one of the most dramatic breakouts in history. Ronald McIntosh used a stolen helicopter to break his girlfriend out of a federal prison. According to Ronald himself, his lover, Samantha Lopez, claimed that she was being threatened in the prison. This compelled him to do whatever he needed to get her out of there. She was sentenced to 50 years because she got caught robbing a bank. The breakout only added 5 extra years to that, which isn't really much in the grand scheme of things. But by now, you're probably wondering where Ronald got a helicopter from. The truth is that just days before he broke Samantha out of prison, he too escaped. He walked away from a prison transfer and ran. He found a helicopter, hijacked it, and then flew right into the prison yard over the barbed wired fence so that his girlfriend could climb inside. It was totally a 007 move, but it didn't end well. The pair then spent 11 days together before the police picked them up at a jewelry store in Sacramento where they were trying to get engraved wedding rings. Number 4. The accomplice. Joyce Mitchell didn't escape from prison. Instead, she was the woman who helped 2 inmates to escape by providing them with the necessary materials. She had never been in prison before, but after she got caught helping the convicted killers escape, she was thrown in the clink for 5 years. It may not have been so bad if not for the people she helped escape. Joyce at the time was a prison worker. She became fascinated with Richard Matt and David Sweat, both of whom were incarcerated at the Clinton Correctional Facility for murder. The killers schemed together to seduce Joyce Mitchell and get her on their side. She helped provide things they would need to break out of the jail, including guns, ammunition, a compass, a hacksaw, chisels, and a complete bag of camping gear. And before the actual escape, she was getting busy with at least one of them, maybe both, in the tailor shop where she worked as the prison tailor. Richard and David used the power tools provided to cut through the back of their cells, smash through the brick wall, bust open a steam pipe, and then wriggle out of the prison and emerge through a manhole. The hunt for these guys went on for 22 days, ending with Matt getting shot and killed, and David getting taken back into custody. Number 3. The Irish Women's Escape of 1830. In 1830, 9 women escaped from an Irish prison, along with a baby. It happened on the 23rd of May, with all 9 of the convicted females serving sentences of 7 years. They were all locked up at the usual time, but when prison guards went to look in the morning, they were all gone. 4 of the women were named Mary, and one of them had an 11-month-old baby with her. 2 of the women were named Margaret. Then there was Ellen, a Bridget, and a Catherine. You can really tell what Irish people were naming their daughters back then. The guards at the jail slowly pieced together what happened and how the women escaped. Over the previous week, the 9 convicts had been working together to break out of their cells. They also had 2 men from the outside scale the prison walls in the middle of the night with a ladder, gaining easy access to the women's ward. It was actually very simple. The women only needed to bust through their cages. Then the men helped them get out of the prison with their ladders. In the end, only one of the women, Mary Hickey, was recaptured. Number 2. Escape from the Auburn Prison for Women. Nobody escaped from the Auburn Prison for Women since it opened in 1894. That was until May 8, 1920. That was when a pair of inmates made an escape straight out of a movie. Dorothy Creer was incarcerated for shooting her sweetheart in New York City after they got into a fight. She had already served 5 years, but still had 5 to go. Irene Milley was serving a similar sentence, though she was in jail for first-degree grand larceny. She had robbed a New York lawyer who she'd been working for. These 2 women worked together on a scheme to earn their freedom. They fashioned disguises out of materials that they scavenged at the prison. Using gray blankets, they made suits for themselves, complete with hats. They even fashioned themselves slippers so they could move silently and not leave any trails behind. Then they used a screwdriver and some strong files to break themselves out of their cells. They removed the locks from their rooms, snuck into the prison kitchen on the 2nd floor, and hopped out of one of the windows that didn't have any bars on it. They used 3 blankets tied together to lower themselves to the ground outside. From here, the women ran into the prison yard and managed to climb over a 12-foot wall to their freedom. But their freedom didn't last for very long. They were only out of prison for about 24 hours before police tracked them down and brought them back to jail. And number 1, The Great Pretender. On August 28, 2021, Ellen Goebel escaped from the Randolph County Jail by impersonating another inmate who was due to be released. It was an impromptu scheme that amazingly paid off. The other inmate was supposed to be released just after 4 o'clock in the morning on Saturday, but when she didn't respond to the wake-up call, Ellen seized the opportunity. She gathered up the other inmate's belongings, kept her head down, forged the other girl's signature, and then walked straight out of the prison. When she left, she was even given the other girl's items that she had originally entered the prison with, including a debit card. Nobody knew what had happened until breakfast, when the girl who was supposed to be released finally woke up. Ellen managed to stay on the run for 9 days before she finally turned herself in to the authorities. She probably could have stayed out longer, but the police were hunting after her pretty hard. She's now being charged with escaping from custody, as well as forgery. The reason she was sent to jail in the first place was second-degree burglary, drug possession, and operating a vehicle without a license.
Would you rather date someone with a criminal history who seems to have turned their life around, or date someone with no criminal history that requires medication to function normally? Let us know in the comments down below. And if you enjoyed this video, be sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next one. Bye.